Hello everyone and welcome to Old Timey Comics, where we head back into the past of superhero comics to bring you all the good, the bad, and the absolutely ridiculous. All alterations of the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Here it is, folks, the first episode of Old Timey Comics that isn't a superhero origin story. We're heading back to January of 1962 to check out Fantastic Four #2 as the team takes on the alien menace of the Skrulls. Since I didn't mention it in the first episode featuring the Fantastic Four, I'll bring it up here. I find it odd that even though the team doesn't have any kind of uniforms yet, all of their clothes survive their powers with no explanation. Reed's can stretch as far as he can, Johnny's don't burst into flame, and while Sue's turn invisible with her, other objects she's holding don't. She's carrying a vase, but what good would that actually do in a fight since your opponent would see it coming? As the actual comic starts, we see the Thing swimming towards an oil rig off the coast of Texas. Things are strange though as Ben tears through the supports of the oil rig, causing it to collapse, and his escape is seen by the staff of the rig as they evacuate. The strangeness continues as Sue is being shown a huge diamond, apparently worth almost $10 million. But rather than just admiring it, Sue grabs the diamond and suddenly vanishes without a trace. Out in the Midwest, we witness the dedication of a huge statue carved out of marble. I'd guess Civil War given the uniforms. Suddenly, the Human Torch flies by, melting the statue to slag. Given that the melting point of marble is over 2400 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than fires for smithing and glass blowing if you need a reference, I'm surprised nobody around has been burned to a crisp. Finally, at an undisclosed power plant, an arm that can only belong to Mr. Fantastic reaches in and shuts off all the power in the city. Their acts of sabotage complete, we quickly realize this group isn't the real Fantastic Four as they reveal how they did it. The Thing destroyed the oil rig using some kind of detonator in his arm. Sue states that she merely appeared invisible by shrinking down to only a few inches tall, but there's a huge hole in that, given that even if she could shrink, the diamond wouldn't. I'm pretty sure the guards would notice a gigantic diamond trying to walk out the door. Johnny accomplished his feat with some kind of anti-gravity pack and a low-density thermal bomb. But I don't understand how he didn't burn himself up since the temperature and burn time requirements basically mean he was flying around covered in thermite. Last but not least is Reed, who reveals that his job was the easiest due to the group's natural shapeshifting ability, as the Skrulls, who look like someone taped bad ears to a fish head, reveal themselves in their plot to turn the world against the only thing standing in the way of a full-scale alien invasion, the Fantastic Four. We check in now with the real Fantastic Four on vacation in a hunting lodge when they hear news of their treachery on the radio. Ben throws a fit over the news and has to be restrained by Reed as usual. And why is Ben wearing sunglasses? There's no need for his out-on-the-town disguise when he's only around the team in the middle of nowhere. No more time to contemplate that, though, as the military surrounds the hunting lodge and forces the team to surrender themselves into their custody. Everyone on the team is placed in a specialized cell. Well, except for Sue. Hers is just a regular prison cell as far as I can tell. Meanwhile, Johnny is locked up in a cell completely lined with asbestos, which in the early comics is pretty much how to stop the Torch 101 due to the fact that it doesn't burn. Ben's cell has walls made out of battleship steel, while Reed's is simply completely empty due to the fear that he'd escape using anything he could get his hands on. But enough pouting, it's time to break out of here. Starting with Sue, who simply turns invisible and walks out when the guards bring her dinner. You're telling me they prepared for the rest of the team, but couldn't be bothered to take any precautions against the invisible girl. Johnny digs into the floor to give himself mesothelioma because it's apparently common knowledge that every room has to have an air vent. Though I don't know what good the vent would be doing completely covered in insulation. Once he has an oxygen supply, Johnny simply burns through the wall and presumably the insulation along with it. I mean, it would make sense given that asbestos melts at 1400 degrees Fahrenheit, while just last issue he was melting steel airplanes just by being near them. Steel melts at about 2500 degrees Fahrenheit in case you were wondering. Ben continually rams himself against the cell wall until it finally gives way, given the theory that if you strike the same point with the same force over and over again, it will eventually break under the stress. Though we may have sped that process up a bit. Finally, Reed spreads his arms all across the room to try and find a flaw in his cell. He eventually finds what he's looking for, a loose rivet, and squeezes his way through the gap. Probably lost his shoes back in the cell, though. Once everyone's free, the team swipes a helicopter and makes their getaway. Later, at the team's secret apartment hideout, they try to formulate a plan to draw out their would-be imposters. Johnny volunteers to act as bait by sabotaging the testing of a new rocket. Though, even if it works, wouldn't that actually be validating the military's claims of treason now? Regardless, Johnny makes his way over to the testing site and completely melts through the unfinished landing platform. He's picked up by the imposter Sue and Reed and tells them, "If I didn't know any better, I'd swear you were Susan Storm and Reed Richards, two of the Fantastic Four." Smooth, Johnny. Real smooth. They'll never suspect a thing. Once they arrive at the Skrull hideout, they reveal their true appearance and realize that Johnny is the real Human Torch. Before they can stop him, he runs through the window and sets off one of the team's hyper-advanced flares to let them know where he is. He attempts to keep the Skrulls busy with a ring of fire, but is brought to a halt when he collides with the Skrull torch. This leaves Johnny unable to flame on for a while, but somehow the Skrull is no worse for wear. Before the Skrulls can finish Johnny off, the cavalry arrives as Ben bursts in. Someone must have told him he looks good in sunglasses because apparently he does not want to give them up. Reed arrives as well, and the battle for Johnny's life goes into full swing. The Skrulls are handily defeated, and Reed interrogates them at gunpoint. Or is that one of their flare guns? It's kind of hard to tell. With the invasion plan revealed, the team decides to masquerade as the Skrull versions of themselves as they make their way to an unassuming water tower, which turns out to be a spacecraft in disguise. Can everything the Skrulls have shapeshift? As they approach the mothership, I'd just like to point out that it's kind of sad since between the start and end of the same issue it has two completely different appearances. So much for continuity. Once aboard the ship, Reed claims that the Skrulls are woefully underprepared for an invasion of Earth. He supplies intelligence in the form of clippings which are secretly from issues of Strange Tales and Journey into Mystery. I see what you did there, Marvel. He thus claims Earth is guarded by monstrous warriors, hidden space mines, and an army of giant insects. Actually, that last one might be true. Has anyone checked up on Dr. Pym lately? Deciding they're completely outmatched, the Skrull leader calls for a full retreat. However, Reed has a higher call of duty and offers to stay behind to remove all traces of Skrull presence on Earth, and is awarded a medal of the highest honor for his brave sacrifice. I wonder if he could use that as some kind of bargaining chip when the Skrulls inevitably come back. As the water tower drifts back to Earth, it passes through a radiation belt which begins to have a strange effect on Ben. What? Not even the alien Skrulls have any kind of radiation shielding on their ships? Not even just a bit of lead? Back on the ground, the team is immediately bathed in floodlights as the authorities have been lying in wait for them. But how? Assuming they ditched the helicopter like they should have, there would be no way of knowing the water tower was actually a ship, let alone where it would land on its way back to Earth. Even in the current situation, though, Ben celebrates as it turns out the radiation belt has caused him to become human again. It's short-lived, however, as he turns back into his lovable Rocky self. In good news, Reed manages to keep the team from being arrested by promising to deliver the authorities to the true saboteurs. As they open the door to the apartment, the Skrulls are loose, with one having turned into a giant snake, which then attacks. If the Skrulls have been able to move freely, why didn't they just escape? I know we have to end the issue, but couldn't they just vacate the apartment, leaving the Fantastic Four as fugitives, and then contact the mothership to let them know that they were duped? Anyway, Ben barrels through and tackles the Skrull, taking it out of the fight. However, it's followed up by another which has covered itself in spiked metal plates. Johnny flies in, causing the Skrull to reel back in fear, because, you know, he melts metal regularly just by being in the same room. A third turns into a bird and attempts to make a break for it, but now it's too late as Reed stretches after it and snags it out of the air, though I honestly don't know what he's anchored to in order not to fall into the street below. Apparently, all of the Skrulls have been defeated and rounded up, but there's only 3 of them. Did we not want to let Sue beat up a Skrull? We're informed that the last Skrull supposedly left with the mothership. So why didn't all of them leave Earth then? Or again, why didn't the last Skrull inform the leader of his deception? Why didn't the Skrulls question 5 of them reporting back instead of the expected 4? So many plot holes and so little time. In the end, Reed allows the trio of Skrulls to remain on Earth, hypnotizing them to turn into cows and erasing their memory of ever being anything else. He's inadvertently created the deepest cover Skrull sleeper agents for a future invasion. But meanwhile, the team is cleared of all suspicion and the day is won. And thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to show your support, or check out Old Timey Comics on Patreon to truly help the show to grow. Have a character or story you'd like to see covered in an episode? Let me know in the comments. If you want to read this story for yourself, you can either check it out with a subscription to Marvel Unlimited or by purchasing it digitally. Stay tuned for the next episode of Old Timey Comics.